Ned Block, professor of philosophy and chairman of the philosophy department at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, is our guest panelist. He specializes in philosophy of science, philosophy of mind, and philosophy of psychology. And his main area of current study, he says, is what we can learn about consciousness from neuropsychology. He has published widely in his fields, and his books include The IQ Controversy, which he co-edited with Richard Dworkin, Imagery, and the 2 volumes of readings in philosophy of psychology, which he edited. In this program, Professor Quine is questioned about his views on some of the major topics in philosophy of mind. His linguistic behaviorism is carefully examined and compared with programs in linguistics and neuroscience, and he gives his opinions on the field of cognitive science. The program concludes with Quine's views on the topics of mental causation and consciousness. We now join the discussion in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Joining Professor Quine for this discussion are Ned Block, Professor of Philosophy at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Paul Horwich, Professor of Philosophy at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Martin Davies, Wild Reader in Mental Philosophy at Oxford University. Ned Block, can you start the discussion off?
Yes. Professor Quine, I'd like to ask you about some remarks that you've made in articles over the years that seem to me to suggest that you are more friendly to the notion of subjective experience than you have been interpreted to be. I think specifically of some remarks you made in a reply to Levison in a volume of your work and criticisms, in which you say explicitly that you are more friendly to introspection than some think, and you speak favorably of giving some scientific understanding of what you call qualia and raw fields. Then in an article of yours called Mind and Verbal Disposition, you say the following: the fixed points are just the shared stimulus and the word. The ideas in between are as may be and may vary as they please, so long as the external stimulus in question stays paired up with the word in question for all concerned. You go on to illustrate this with a fantasy that is often called the inverted spectrum hypothesis. The idea that perhaps things we both call red look to you the way things we both call green look to me. That is, as you put it, quote, that I see things in colors opposite to those in which you see the things. You conclude that, quote, for communication it is a matter of indifference. Would I be right in interpreting you as saying that an inverted spectrum is perhaps possible, but that it doesn't matter for communication so long as the input-output relations are unaffected?
The inverted spectrum, the extent to which that makes sense is still a puzzle to me. That free reference to ideas in the passage that you read, that's a matter of, for the sake of argument, giving the reader the full freedom of his traditional subjective, mentalistic concepts, uncritically that is, in order to make the point that that doesn't matter. All those things and the issues concerning them are irrelevant to the linguistic side of assessing communication. Then, as for what status to give introspective data, in general, my position is very much what I take Dan Dennett's to be, namely that introspection is indispensable heuristically, and it's a source of insights that lead to theory, but it is not explanatory. But I'd say much the same of the behavioral side. That in the case of behavior, the behavioral description of perhaps of a disease in terms of symptoms, or perhaps of linguistic notions. These are necessary, or even of a physical problem. These are necessary in order to identify the problem, in order to gather data on the solution. But in all these cases, whether of mental entities or of linguistic phenomena, the ultimate explanation has got to be in the nervous system. And it's going to be mechanistic, it's going to be physiological.
So would it be right to understand you as saying that it remains an open possibility that we could discover that the experience I get when I see something red is identical to a certain neural state, and that very neural state is the one you get when you see green? And so our experiences would differ in this systematic way. However, what you do want to insist on is that that wouldn't at all affect the meaning and content of our verbal utterances and our thoughts about the world. It's just there might be this neurally specified, these neurally identified experiential states that differ systematically between us.
What bothers me here is the impossibility of even describing what a test might be, and that is a strong, perhaps conclusive basis for doubting that there's any meaning to the problem. What's bothersome about it is that it has such a vivid, intuitive semblance of a meaning, and that's the reason for hesitation. No matter how thorough an insight we finally achieve into the nervous system and its mechanisms and behavior, the result would presumably be, just as you say, that these are identical from one person to another, without touching the question whether his subjective experience of these colors is the same as ours. So I think that this has to be put aside as a paradoxically meaningless issue. Paradoxical because of the vividness of its apparent meaning.